hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us in the Sex Trafficking and Gender-Based Violence in Mines and Mining Community panel. I'm Susan Wheeler, and I am stepping in as the moderator today. There was, with the conference, there was a scheduling problem with us, and Conchita Sarnoff, who was to be moderating, is currently on a plane. So we hope that Conchita can join us tomorrow when she lands, and to have a separate session to address even more topics and even more areas around this topic. So today we are very happy to bring you our panelists. We have Dr. Jocelyn Kelly, who is director of the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative, the Honorable Grace Njapau Efrati, and who is the head of the Association of Zambian Women in Mining. And we have Gladys Balance, gender studies lecturer and researcher, and also a member of the Marangi Women's Alliance. So thank you each for joining us. We're very happy to have you here and to talk about this subject. This panel really came about started in a conversation that I had with Marangi Women's Alliance and a friend of mine, Sarah LaCroix, who works in human trafficking in Michigan. And when Sarah was talking with a group of women about what they were seeing in Marangi, Zimbabwe, which is the diamond fields there in the community, when they were talking together, and Sarah was talking about the trafficking that she saw at truck stops and what that looked like, where a woman would be trafficked from one stop to another and taken away from her home and her community, and would go within the system. It was very similar to what was happening in Zimbabwe in the small scale mines, where women were disappearing, where families were losing their daughters to this system. So building on this and building on what I've been learning about sex trafficking, which is just the tip of the iceberg around our mining communities, and I've been learning on this, I thought we really needed to discuss this as a jewelry industry and to see how this is happening in areas where we source our materials from: gold, diamonds, and gemstones. It's happening globally to the communities that we really rely on in our supply chain. So with that, Gladys, can you give us an overview of the different ways that you see trafficking within the communities, in small scale, large scale, and the different ways that you're seeing trafficking work?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much from this day. I'm representing the perspectives of Marangi Women's Alliance on issues regarding to sex trafficking and gender-based violence that has been perpetrated against women and the girls by both artisanal miners and personnel from the large-scale miners. We realized that previously, like what Susan has been saying,
Gladys, you seem to be frozen. We will get back to Gladys and we'll continue with Jocelyn. Just so you know, Gladys has traveled for 4.5 hours to get to a hotel where she can have reception. And there has been some power outages lately. So we're facing some challenges here, but we thought it was very valuable to hear her voice. So we'll wait till she connects. And Jocelyn, if you don't mind, Jocelyn brings in an educational curriculum around this subject. And just a minute. Gladys, we're going to wait until you have reception right now. And we'll wait until she comes back. So Jocelyn, tell us about Actually, let's see. Gladys, I'm sorry. Can you see now? Let's listen and see if we can hear you now.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, this is better.
Yes. So I was saying that. Okay, so I was saying that trafficking is being looked at from the Marange women's perspective as a local or a domesticated phenomenon that is emerging. And we are saying the challenges that women are facing are being exacerbated by the presence of artisanal miners, as well as the personnel who are working with the mining companies like the
Gladys, I'm going to ask you to turn your video off and see if, there we go. And in the meantime, Jocelyn, go ahead and let's start with your curriculum. And then we'll go back to how we see this in the other communities and how it is ubiquitous.
Susan, could we go ahead with the video? We're actually having a fire alarm now that is just a test, but I think that might be a nice way to try to begin the presentation.
Let's roll the video.
Three women-led NGOs in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, ASEFA, SOFEDI, and IFIDI, are partnering with Harvard Humanitarian Initiative to create an evidence-based and replicable curriculum that will address human rights, gender-based violence, and environmental protection. Pictured here is a launch conference undertaken in October 2020 to train partners on the curriculum. The teaching materials use vignettes and images to ensure that all people in mining towns, including those who may not be literate, can benefit equally from the messages being conveyed in this project. The goal of the project is to create materials for a resourceful empowerment teaching kit aimed at reducing sexual harassment and abuse in mining towns while teaching environmental best practices. The year-long curriculum will emphasize human rights and Congolese law, women's protection, safe mining practices, and measures for mitigating mining's environmental impact in the provinces of Maniema, North and South Kivu. The Resourceful Empowerment Project is generously funded by USAID under the RISE Challenge.
Great, thank you. Jocelyn, are you able to speak now? Okay, all right, we'll wait. Grace, why don't we go to you, because I think you also have a good view of kind of the overview of how you've seen trafficking throughout the many areas that you work in mining and in the history that you have in working with women's in mining. Can you help us with kind of an overview of what you see happening on the ground?
Thank you so much, Susan. I'm representing Association of Zambian Women in Mining in Zambia, and I'm so excited and happy that I'm part of this program. We are looking at a discrimination of women and children in mining, communities, and illicit sexual trafficking, which we have said it is slavery, not trafficking. I just want to share with you that sexual and gender-based violence, SGBV, is a human rights violation and a global concern affecting women. So women, men, and girls, boys across the world, while SGBV can be found within many sectors and value chains. You know, many researchers have really done the cases examples of highlighting specific concerns in the mining sector. And these are the issues that we are talking today about the girl child, the women, the boys, and including some men. So what are we saying here? We are saying violence against children is a form of SGBV. And the framework of this presentation notes that women can have varying various roles in relation to the mining sector. So similarly, we have a lot of issues here about the children and women. And I believe that to address this issue, as we discussed the other day, we need to have a strong voice, and we need to be one, despite of where we are, because the woman out there in the mining sector, the girl child who is there in the mining sector needs our voices. So it will be very important for us to see how best we can help these vulnerable women and girl child, because they will need somebody out there to say, we have a voice out there and we have somebody who can speak on our behalf. So these are the issues that we needed to look at. And many times, Susan, people from these communities are offered false employment opportunities, in major cities. And for example, men and women sent overseas to be in construction, to be in agriculture, but most of these targeted groups are women and young girls who are victims of sexual trafficking due to their inability to sustain themselves. So these are the families, hence, being subjected to sexual trafficking and abused. So what should we do since they are being threatened and sold in sexual industries? What was false promises are the order of the day, because these guys, to me, I look at them as criminals, because they come in a closed ship, but in their hearts, they are there to marginalize these poor girls and women. So, like in Zambia right now, we are working with organization called UNDP. We are looking at all these issues. How would we help these women in order to effectively combat human trafficking? What should we do? We must address this lack of awareness in the mining sector, as well as our communities. So these are the things that we have to look at. So, Susan, coming to your question, we must have a very strong voice. We must be there for them, not them for us, because they're the ones who are having challenges. They're the ones who are being molested. They're the ones who are having serious problems. So they must have somebody who is there for them. And be it in Europe, be it in Asia, be it in Africa, so long we are women, we need to stand up and fight this criminality.
I think. Oh, sorry.
So
Sorry.
I think these are some of the issues that we have to look at. But indeed, it is our responsibility. It is us to stand up and say, enough is enough. Africa and Europe, there is a very big difference. In Africa, we have so many challenges. The poverty. Most children that we have been talking to and the women, they say, we are doing this because we have no food on the table. We are doing this because our father is a drunkard. We are doing this because we are orphans. So we have a lot of challenges in Africa, and we need to come up together as women. As I have said, let's forget about I'm from Europe. Let's forget about I'm from Asia. Let's forget about I'm from Africa. But let's remember that we are all women despite of where we come from. Perhaps
Absolutely.
I can end up here, then I can continue.
Well, in hearing you speak, Grace, I think that this is why it's so important to bring this topic to this audience, because we are, speaking as women. And when we look about why this topic here, why this topic in around jewelry, because women are consumers of jewelry. Women we have many women jewelers here involved, and women jewelers who don't want to see this happening to other women anywhere. And so that is why we need to bring awareness to how this is happening, to what can we do and how can we intervene together as women supporting women. So I agree with you, and I think that this is just the beginning, this panel. So with that said, Gladys, how's your internet? Are you ready to show us what you see on the ground there? We can see you. So let's see if we can hear you well. It might help if you turn off your camera.
Yeah, I think now my my network is a bit stable. I can just give it a shot again.
Excellent.
If I turn it off, okay, let me turn it off.
Okay, that's good.
I was saying that, okay, looking at it from the perspective of Marange Women's Alliance, there are grave concerns pertaining to how women and girls are being treated, or the way they are living right now as a result of the mining that is happening. And as I said earlier on, we are saying trafficking is happening at the local or at the domestic level. And we are saying the problem is emanating from both the artisanal miners as well as personnel from within the mining companies working in Marange. For instance, we talk of the ZCDC and Anjini. There are certain practices coming from the guards, coming from the security guys, which are subjecting women and girls to the problems or the challenges pertaining to sexual abuse and gender-based violence. And for instance, when we say that sex trafficking has become localized, we are looking at it from the perspective where it become an interprovincial, kind of system of movement, or where women are moving from provinces, different provinces, as far as Harare, Blawayo, Mutare, Matabeleland. They are all converging in Marange. And when we say converging in Marange, who is bringing them there? We are looking at the artisanal miners. They go back to their homes after they've made a bit of some money from mining. They lure these women, bring them to Marange with the promises of giving them a better life. Once they get there, they will do whatever they do with them and later on abandon them when their resources dwindle. These ladies are left desperate. They end up becoming prostitutes. They end up doing sex work. Why? Because they don't have anywhere else to go. Some of them would have run away from home. They would have left their families. They would have left their marriages to be with these artisanal miners. And as a result, having to go back becomes a challenge. So an interprovincial trafficking system is really emerging. And when we look at it from a local perspective, we are saying there is an inter-district, or within the villages itself, or within the wards of Marange, we have got a situation where the girls, they move from one village to the next, they move from one ward to the next, following these artisanal miners. And it's not a question of saying they choose or they don't choose. At times, we have a problem with older women who also encourage the young women to go for the purposes of getting resources from the artisanal miners. So in other words, we are saying that the older women are working in cohorts with the artisanal miners. They are manipulated into giving their daughters, into giving the children they have guardianship over to these artisanal miners. By night, these are minors, and by day, they are sons-in-laws. But the problem now comes when these so-called sons-in-laws in courts realize that their resources are dwindling, or when they realize that they have to go elsewhere where the minerals would have been found again, they tend to either leave them or drag them with them, take them with them, in the name of saying, I've invested so much in you, so you are mine, you have to be with me. At times, it's something different. They can just abandon them, or they can actually pledge them to the next artisanal miner. They will sort of sell the woman to the next artisanal miner. One lady actually reported to us when we were interacting with them during one of the campaigns that we had, to say they can be sold for as little as $20. The artisanal miners will be so desperate to move on, to an extent that they will just pledge the woman to the next artisanal miner. And because the women do not have, the decision-making power, or they are desperate, they've got nothing, nowhere to go or nothing to do, they are forced to accept. And by virtue of doing that, they are being turned into prostitutes. They are being turned into sex workers. Either by choice or by default, they are forced into what? Into prostitution. So this trafficking now, you find that it's kind of happening where the women, the girls, might not have really choices as to what to do. One, we are talking about exploitation. Two, we are talking about manipulation. Three, we are talking about lack of access and control to resources. Because we are saying, had it been a situation whereby they are coming into Marange as workers themselves, then they would have something to do. But there is a tendency to discriminate against the women from working within the mines. That's why we have got a limited number of women within the big mines. And as such, they end up relying on the artisanal miners for their livelihoods, which becomes a challenge because they are now being bonded to these artisanal miners who can do whatever with them in terms of sex trafficking, which becomes a big challenge. Then also we find that it's not only about the artisanal miners. We have got the guards, we have got the securities. There's a tendency to guard so much, to protect so much on these concessions, to an extent that at times when there's a hive of activity with the artisanal miners, there's what we term reactions. Reactions, they entail that the guards will get into the villages, they'll get into the shops where these community people are. They'll raid, they do roundups, they just do what you call bang-ins. They suddenly get into a homestead, get into a household, do random searches. By so doing, they are denying the women, dignity, the privacy at large. These women are exposed. These women are just taken by the security men, by the guards, with them for detention. And what now happens with those detentions is such that for them to be released, they have to be sextorted. At the end of the day, it's about, for you to be released, you have to pay in kind. You have to give us sexual favors. That's the real problem that women are having. They are being sextorted for the purposes of being released from the detentions that would have happened as a result of the roundups. So there's that friction now where we're saying they are sort of facing a double-edged, challenge. At one point within the communities, we have got the artisanal miners, and at the same time, we have got the men in the uniform who should be protecting them at large. But the problem is these same men who are supposed to be protecting the environment, protecting the minerals, and protecting the women themselves are also now working against them. They are sextorting them, they are violating them, they are abusing them. And the major challenge is, in as much as they might want to report, the system that is there right now is not so favorable because there's sort of lack of willingness to prosecute. That's why at the end of the day, we find that these people, the perpetrators, are walking around in impunity. They are not held responsible of what they are doing to the women. So that's another challenge where we are saying women, girls are facing challenges when there are roundups, when there are reactions, when there are detentions, and at the end of the day, whom to go to, it becomes a problem. And then we also have got another problem where we have women traditionally, from a Zimbabwean perspective, they are the custodians of the environment. They have to go out into the environment in search of fodder, water. They are the ones who rear livestock. They have to take care of the cattle, the goats, and everything. And by so doing, they are forced to venture into the mineral, the field, the mining fields. And when their livestock stray into the concessions, they are again subjected to challenges, where now the guards will confiscate the livestock. And for them to retrieve them, again, they are subjected to sextortion. For you to get your cattle, you have to have sex with me. For you to have access to your livestock, it's either you pay in kind or we release the livestock to some far away place where they have to trek again to go and collect them. So at the end of the day, they are left with little choices. They are left with little choices. And what just happens is they end up becoming subjected to issues of gender-based violence and sexual violation. Then, above all, we are saying, yes, there's trafficking, but what is really emerging in Marange right now pertains to gender-based violence. There is an increase which has been shown or which has been manifested by rape cases. Young girls as young as 11, as young as 13 are being subjected to rape. They are being raped. And the reportage, yes, it can be done, but willingness to prosecute is compromised. Women are being manipulated. They are being exploited. They are promised better lives by these people who later on rape their children. We had a case where a homestead was burnt down by a man who had gotten into a relationship that resulted in a woman leaving a marital home, getting married to him, and in the process, he went further to rape her daughter. And because of the confrontations, because of the conflict, he goes on to burn the homestead of that woman. So in a way, we have a problem. So with regards to our way forward now, we are saying the major problem that we have realized as Marange Women's Alliance is that there is a kind of culture of silence that is prevalent amongst the women in Marange. One, it is embedded in issues of religion. Women seems to have been socialized into this system's justification. We tend to have women who justify the situation. So we want them to be out there to talk about it. Yes, as Marange Women's Alliance, we have been encouraging citizen journalism, but we need to step it further so that everyone becomes involved, everyone gets the understanding of what has to be done. Also, we have realized that there's lack of education and knowledge of the women's rights. Yes, human rights, but the women's rights themselves, they have to be amplified. We have to have the women's voices heard. And in such a situation now, as Women's Alliance, Marange Women's Alliance, we are calling for training of the trainers. Us as the women in Marange, we want a situation where we have women come in, amplify their voices, speak to other women in the society, try by all means to advocate for the political will to have these men who are trafficking women held accountable. The companies that have men or their guards working against the dignity of the women being held accountable. I will tell you one thing for sure. I've been trying to find gender policies for these companies online on the public domain, but I failed. And as a result, you tend to question that, do they have the will to work to address the plight of the women? If we don't have a gender policy on the public domain, what does it entail? How do we question them? How do we bring them to book? So as Marange Women's Alliance, we are really advocating for that education to be there, to be visible, mobilization of women to come on together and work together. I think with that, I rest my case. Thank you, Susan.
Yeah. Gladys, I think that this is everything that you've brought up is so important. I think that Marange Women's Alliance has been doing wonderful work in intervention. I just want to say also in putting this panel together, their Oxfam has a paper out on women in mining and gender assessment around gender-based violence. And I hope that this is something we start to integrate some sort of assessment into all mine sites because it's not properly explored or covered. But when we're talking about education and immediate interventions, that brings us back to Dr. Jocelyn Kelly, who has an entire curriculum. And would you like to show us your presentation now, Jocelyn?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Susan. And I feel like pivoting to the unexpected is something that we're all very used to doing. And so we did it again with this panel. I decided to present slides for my presentation because the visuals are such a core part of the project that we're excited to bring to you today. And I also just want to say thank you to Susan and everyone in the audience, but particularly to these extraordinary women who are also on the panel with me, to Gladys and Grace for the work that you do. So I'm presenting here on behalf of other extraordinary female human rights champions who work in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where I've also worked for the past 15 years. And what we wanted to do at the beginning of our partnership 15 years ago with all of the organizations mentioned on this slide, ASEFA, IFED, SOFEDI, was to begin to document the problems that Gladys and Grace have talked about so eloquently, and to raise awareness about some of the horrific challenges that women faced in artisanal mining towns. But recently we decided that just documenting the problem and surfacing these issues wasn't enough, and we decided to take collective action together to create some change in some of the most remote mining towns around the world. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about that story. So as many of you know, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is a conflict-infected environment that has faced over 2 decades of war. And during that time, artisanal and small-scale mining emerged as a really powerful economic driver, even though many forms of exploitation and abuse occur within the sector. As the conflict in Congo raged, the agricultural industry eroded, and the country faced displacement, mass looting, insecurity, and market deterioration. And as a result of that, many people turned towards mining as one of the most promising sources of much needed income that was stable amidst this war. So upwards of 400,000 to 550,000 people directly engage in artisanal and small scale mining. That's what ASM means. There's many minerals that are present in DRC, including gold, cassiterite, columbo-tantalite, wolframite, and precious gemstones. And artisanal and small scale mining actually provides revenue to 16% of the population in the country. But as noted before, it also carries this risk of discrimination, exploitation, and abuse. And in particular, there was little systematic work to really understand the shape of that kind of abuse and exploitation. So we worked together with these extraordinary human rights defenders and change makers in Eastern DRC who are women advocates and who created their own grassroots organizations to begin to document some of these challenges in a really systematic and rigorous way. Through a course of a number of projects supported by USAID and the World Bank, we found that only 17% of women working in mining towns think that they actually have the right to work there, even though their right to work in mining is protected by law. This feeling that they don't belong or don't have the right to be in these sites means that they face extraordinarily high levels of exploitation and abuse by men who try to extort them. 1 in 7 women were forced to trade sex just to access work in the mines. And it's not high-paying work. It's being, selling small baked goods by the side of the mine, selling avocados, selling beer. And so they're really pushed out of the value chain, but still have to face this exploitation just to be present in the mines. 1 in 3 women stated they had experienced sexual harassment, and only 1 in 4 of these women had discussed these kinds of abuse that they faced. We also undertook a large-scale population-based study all throughout the east of DRC and found that 1 in 15 people had experienced some form of trafficking. One of the most common forms of trafficking was labor trafficking and debt bondage, but we also found that women face sex trafficking and child marriage as well. But despite all of these extraordinarily high barriers to entry and to facing really high levels of abuse, women's right to work in mining towns is enshrined in Congolese law and in the National Mining Code. And women have stated themselves that they want to continue working in the areas, but they feel that they have the right to work safely. They stated during these research projects a number of solutions that would help them do this more effectively. Those solutions included self-organizing, connecting with one another, connecting with these small grassroots organizations that had popped up spontaneously all across the country with the same mission, and in order to create some collective action around the problems that they faced. So what was the path forward? We thought about providing technical assistance related to safety and health in artisanal and small-scale mining, to engage in education around the mining code and the rights that women and men have, so women could no longer be told they didn't belong or had to bribe people to be able to work in these towns, to strengthen the capacity of local associations so they could better advocate for themselves, but also be connected across organizations and advocate across the country, and then to promote grassroots inclusive economic cooperatives, which women are usually excluded from in Eastern DRC. So we created a curriculum we're really excited about called the Resourceful Empowerment Project. And the project is the title of Elevating Women's Voices for Human and Environmental Protection in Congolese Small-Scale Mining Sites. I put a link in the chat for anyone interested in learning more. So ASEFA is a woman-led organization, and it's leading this consortium of other women's organizations across 3 provinces that basically span the entire eastern side of the country. And their goal is to empower women to advocate for better environmental practices as well as improved human rights. This is actually one of our amazing project partners, Vivienne, who runs the work in South Kivu. So what did we want to do? We wanted to create relevant, sensitive, and evidence-based learning materials that people could learn from and teach each other and have a train of the training models. So basically, we have a scalable curriculum that is easy to implement and really cost effective. We drew on lots of evidence-based practice, which is where Harvard University comes in. So we're really good at researching what works and what doesn't, and we're pretty good at teaching. So we also helped these amazing organizations put together the teaching materials to lift some of the burden off of them. One of the things I'm most excited about for this curriculum is that we acknowledge that a lot of people working in small-scale mining didn't have the opportunity to access education, and that's particularly true of women. So we decided to create a curriculum that was actually really visual-based, using vignettes and a comic book style that could be kind of captured or understood by folks who are not necessarily able to read long reports. And our favorite part of this curriculum is that it was actually created by a female Congolese artist who helped us put all of these extraordinary materials together. Here are a few of our favorite images from this work. Here we're showing the importance of getting an identification card for your right to work in small-scale mining, and it's a way to try to combat exploitation and abuse that you might face by having more of a formalized presence. And here's one of our incredible women trainers who's doing a training of the trainer session with male miners. And you can see, I think that looks like maybe some coltan or cassiterite here in the lower right-hand corner. What we've seen over almost a year of implementing this work is that the impact has been off the charts, far better than we had expected. And I don't want to say surprisingly, but we've actually seen extraordinary uptake from the Congolese government and interest in kind of disseminating this much more widely than the pilot sites where we're already working. Really incredibly, also, the government and the Ministry of Health came to our trainers when COVID hit and said, everyone listens to you, you have beautiful materials, can you help raise awareness about how to combat COVID in the mining sites, because it hit right at the beginning of implementation. And we were able to do that and also able to continue training in a safe and socially distanced way. We've also found that both women and men have been able to successfully advocate and insist on their right to have protective equipment, which wasn't happening before, that men and women are now collaborating to help each other in ore laundering at the sites. We've seen a number of male champions stand up to fight against gender-based violence and to support female leadership in mining towns. That has led to more equal pay for men and women being able to actually join more mining cooperatives where a lot of decisions are made and where a lot of power rests in these mining towns. So right now we're in a pilot phase. We cannot wait to take this to scale, to work with women partners across DRC and across Africa to make this more sustainable and replicable for other sites. And that's it. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for that presentation. And it's wonderful that there's a curriculum that you've built, and I'm sure there are so many mining communities globally that could use this. What's being done now as far as how we're connecting as, jewelry industry people with other mines and other mining areas to try and get this curriculum in other mining sites? Is there something that is being done or that we can know about to help spread this to women in mining communities everywhere?
We love that question, Susan. And one of the things that we are really excited about is the head of our consortium, Annie, is a Congolese woman who is also the president of RENAFEM, which is the National Women's Network for Women Working in Small-Scale Mining in Congo. And RENAFEM has started to create some connections with other women's national networks, maybe in Zimbabwe and South Sudan and Central African Republic. And we'd love to support those connections and opportunities for cross-learning. I will note that we are, we're applying for grants. We really want to keep this work going. It's been a little challenging for obvious reasons. I think the world is really focused on the pandemic and the challenges brought by that. But I think we've tried to create something that's really cost effective that can be shared pretty easily. We'd really love the opportunity to continue to adapt this for other environments. So one module of the training does relate specifically to Congolese law and the Congolese mining code, but we'd love to work with partners to think about adapting that to the other country contexts in a thoughtful way. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, and it's an extraordinary consortium. It's been such a joy to see it kind of forge ahead despite a lot of the challenges this past year.
I think that everyone will want that to forge ahead. And let me just say is on this topic that when I was looking into many of the research papers that have been done and even to assessments around gender-based violence and women in mining, many of these groups who've done this have been defunded since COVID. And it seems like we really need to push as women to see the funding continue to go towards assessments and towards bringing education curriculums like yours and into the communities around gender-based violence. Grace, as president of the Women in Mining Association Zambia right now, how do you see ways that we can bring this curriculum forward and in what the women in mining associations can be doing and are doing in these areas?
Thank you, Susan. I think for us in Zambia, or normally I don't talk about Zambia alone. I speak for Africa because I feel Africa is one. I think what we need to do here is to, first of all, we need to find out what is the root cause, which is causing this sexual trafficking. Secondly, we must also know that these are issues which start from the communities and the families. So we need to tackle with the families first. We must talk to the families. Why is it that this sexual harassment, this sexual trafficking, and other related, SGBV is in place? So those are the things that we need to do first. Secondly, we need to have education. We need to sensitize. We need to understand. They need to understand that there are people out there who are able to help us. Why I say to help them? Because most of the mothers, they are divorcees. So we need to have the education. We need to make sure that we reach them. We talk to them, because these things are happening from the families. And us in Zambia, as the Association of Zambian Women in Mining, we have put in place, actually we have been going around. We want to formalize some cooperatives for us to be able to interact with them. to understand what are their problems. And we also discussed with some of the traditional chiefs, traditional rulers, to help us sensitize these people, to help us to come together with these people. But also we have a problem. Some of the chiefs in our society, they allow such kind of things to happen, like early marriages, like you have to, if you are sick, you have to sleep with a man so that that disease goes. So these are some of the things that we need to put into education, to educate the very communities from the start. Because I find that all these challenges, all these things that we are talking about, the root cause is the community and the family. The outbringing is very important. I know there have been so many researches, but we talk about these things, they write good, they speak good English, but when it comes to implementation, we are not there. And we shall be talking about the same thing all the time. So it will be important for us to have this uh, education sensitization, so that those people who are not aware of the dangers, one, the early marriages, two, the cleansing, that if you sleep with a man, then your disease will go away, then people will go there to sleep with men. Sometimes actually it's not sexual abuse. They go in themselves because they have been told, if you sleep with that man, you have luck, especially in Africa. So these are some of the things that we have to tackle. Coming to what is going on, I find it that the problem that we are having is most men, they feel challenged. Um, they are not stable to themselves. They feel women are now riding on them because they are told the men are the heads of the house. So these are some of the things that also we have to look at. I think I can suggest one thing, or I can say one thing. Like there is a picture that I didn't even send it to you. This is why I say men becomes very uncomfortable, because they feel women are being superior over them. Hence, us who are able to help this situation have to come together with one voice. In our language, in Zambian language, we have this saying, Liwi Imozi. This is one of our languages in Zambia called Nyanja. And so be it in Africa. As long as we are called women, Susan, I still insist we need to have an entity. We need to create a synod. We need to create a group that can help us, because these things we have been talking in, we have been discussing in seminars. We have been discussing in seminars and other places. So I find myself to be saying, why do we talk about this all the time? Why do we talk about drug sex trafficking? Why do we talk about a young girl sleeping with an old man in a mine, or a young girl a young man sleeping with an old woman? So these are the things that I feel that yes, as much as we are discussing these issues, but we must find out exactly what makes these things to happen. Is it education? Is it education? Is it perhaps people are just doing deliberate things, or they are sending their children to sleep with men, or they are sending their children to any man, or because they are widows, or because they are orphans? So it is something that we have to look at. And I'm still insisting the root cause or the beginning is with the family. Let's go back to the family. Let's find out what is the problem. What should we do to help them come out in that slumber? I think these are some of the things that we have to discuss. because this sex trafficking, this, all sorts of things, we have been discussing them for a long time. Before some of us were even the president of associations. Even the time when I was a Minister of Home Affairs, I used to tell men to behave. But you find the mothers, the sisters that say, you are telling my child not to sleep with this man. Are you going to feed me? Totally rubbish. But these are the things that as leaders we need to stand up. I still feel that this platform, it will take us somewhere where we can be able to help the vulnerables, to go to the root cause, to sensitize the chiefs, to sensitize the mothers and the fathers, to talk about it openly, because in African context, when you talk about sex, they say it is taboo. But we need just to open up. I think
Yes.
that is my take.
I think this is a great place to begin to open up, and thank you, Grace, because that really, the unification that you're looking for in voice, I think is so important, and the words are very powerful. One of the things that's come up in really speaks to what you were saying as well, and has come up in the chat, is Monica Stevenson was asking Jocelyn if you include men in the curriculum. And I think in everything Grace was saying, and I've, can see it in Zimbabwe in these structures, how are men, or how can men be included? How should men be included in this work around trying to change things around sex trafficking and trafficking in the mines?
I can say a few brief words, and then of course I'd love to hear from Gladys and Grace as well. I think Democratic Republic of the Congo has been known as one of the worst places in the world to be a woman, according to the head of the United Nations. And needless to say, that's created a lot of tension and frustration and an enormous amount of focus on exploitation of women. And what you can see, of course, is a backlash effect where men are really tired of saying, like, this is the only issue we talk about. Also, frankly, what about us? We want to be included in these discussions. We also, want to be included in services and in solutions. The structure of our work is to have combined trainings with both men and women, and to undertake actually a lot of kind of empathy-based exercises and exercises of what it would feel like to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. And what we've seen is, like, one, giving training that benefits everyone in the mining town around public health, around occupational safety, creates an enormous amount of interest from both women and men. There's a shared goal, there's a shared objective, and then there's a lot of kind of morale building and connection that happens as part of the year-long training. And then what we also see is that through some of the empathy-based programming, people are really all of a sudden starting to feel like, wow, that's what it feels like to be someone who washes ore 12 hours a day. It's back-breaking work and you're not getting paid. And that's where we've seen actually all of this, frankly, spontaneous, unprogrammed, community-based action to advocate for more equal pay, for more equal participation in mining towns. That was not prescribed within the training. Those were things that community members came up with on their own as something that the kind of community they wanted to live in would look like this. And that's why those actions were undertaken. And it's been just incredible to see that happen. And it has to happen by engaging both women and men together.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. We have just 5 minutes left. So Gladys and Grace, if you want to quickly speak to that or have a few words in closing, then we can address that as well.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I think in Zimbabwe and in Marange, particularly the Women's Alliance, we are trying to engage the traditional leaders. We are trying to engage the police to be involved. And it is our hope that we'll continue to mobilize them to be with us, to work with the women, to have an attitude change towards the way they view women's groups, the way they view women as a gender, and to appreciate that women really are there to support them, not to override them. We want to avoid a situation whereby they misinterpret our presence or our endeavors as trying to challenge them, but to appreciate that it takes both males and females men and women to work together for the betterment of the communities that we are living within. And as a result, it is our wish to mobilize and to keep working with the men towards that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Gladys, thank you.
yeah, I think when we talk of attitude, we have to change the attitude. First of all, we need to understand that we come from different backgrounds, and we come from different families. So we have values where we come from. Now, coming to the police, as Gladys has said, it is a very good thing. But some policemen are the culprits, are the one who are doing, harassing women, sleeping with young girls, because they are taking advantage of them because they are police officers. So we need, I think, for me, I would love to see the organization to take a center stage, so that even when we are talking to the chiefs or whoever, or the council, or whoever we're going to talk to, we need to have a strong base to ourselves. We need to have the strong organization that will be only for women to stand up and speak, and defend the other woman out there. I think this will be the most important thing for me. Yes, we need also the political will. Is our countries, the leadership, are they able to support us? Are they ready to fight the fight against sexual harassment in mining, say, areas? So these are the issues that we need to tackle. And also, we need to see to it that as women, we should not be like the men who only talk, but let's be women who can walk a talk. I believe by doing that, even the world will see that women now, they are strong, they've stood up as one. I repeat this again, be it in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, if you are a woman, you are a woman. And we have just to come together. Let's unite ourselves. Let's see how best we can fight these criminals who are, destroying the society in our countries and in the mining area. Thank you.
Grace, it's so powerful, and we stand with you on that as women supporting women. And I think that and all of the men on here as well, Brian Cook, Women Helping Women, plus the international jewelry community stepping up. So I think that this is the beginning of a strong voice, and I think that we need to continue to say that we want this to be addressed. We want this to be addressed globally in mines. It's happening everywhere. We did speak today on, specific areas in, in DRC, in Zambia, and DRC. This is happening throughout South America. It's happening in mines globally. And we need to come together, I think, as a jewelry industry and say, no more. We want this addressed. We want this included in assessments, in the way mines are looked at, in the structures, right? I mean, we have just a few more minutes more, but to have women included in the mines, to have jobs in the mines that are viable jobs, that are accessible jobs. Women can be working in the guard system. They can be doing many, many things in the mines that they currently aren't. So with that, thank you, Jocelyn. Do you have any closing words as well?
No, thank you so much, Susan. Just to say again, it is an honor to be here with Grace and Gladys and to represent these extraordinary women who are making such change on the ground.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Grace and Gladys, for joining us as well. It was truly an honor to have authentic voices telling us what things look like in your communities. In Grace, all the efforts that you've made. In Gladys, traveling 5 hours to get to a space with internet to share for us. So we look forward to everyone really staying on the subject. Jocelyn, we're all rooting to have your curriculum taken globally to mines everywhere. And Grace, we are one voice with you. So this is just the beginning of this conversation. We will be supporting this movement towards a unified voice to stopping trafficking in mine sites, in mining communities. Thank you very much.
Bravo.